Hello, family, and welcome to another episode of Role Model Makers Experts Cafe. I'm your host, Dr. L, the Parent Whisperer, and today with me, I have an amazing lady, Miss Diane Devenyi. I hope I said that right, Diane.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Welcome to the show, and thank you guys for tuning in. I've had an opportunity to meet Diane in some of our networking events, and I love how she shows up. And I believe that her content and her topic is important for you. So, Diane, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do and how you got involved doing it? And we'll go from there.
Well, I actually started off as a tax lawyer, believe it or not, and in 1999 made the declaration that I was here to revamp education on the planet. Not intending that to come out of my mouth, but it did. And so since then, I've been absolutely committed to that mission. And the way that I do it is focus on the best foundation for learning, for literacy, for life. Because if there's anything we've learned in the past few years, it's that we can't predict anything, and that life is rapidly changing. We've got AI changing the future of employment and probably education. Every single week it's changing. So being able to learn, unlearn, and relearn with ease, with confidence, and with joy is more important now than it has ever been. And the approach that I take to that combines the sciences of happiness, the science of learning, and we bring it all together and really give families an opportunity to become future-proof together.
So you bring up a good point, this ever-changing and environment and how parents are supposed to, or children are supposed to cope with it. Now, it's a huge jump from tax to this. So was there a point in this where you noticed the connection, or how did you decide to go from tax to education? And is it just about finances or other stuff as well?
No, it's because I have 3 children, and my oldest son, when he was 10 years old, decided he didn't like school anymore. And he said they weren't nice and they were asking him to do stupid things. And so I thought, well, I can't really disagree with that perspective, but I was wondering how to support him. And we began with a very expensive psychological assessment. They put his IQ way off the charts, above the 99th percentile. And I thought, okay, what is going on here? And I started digging. And, you know, my nature as somebody who would pursue a career in taxation law led me to looking at a variety of approaches, both for correcting dyslexia, for the brain gym, educational kinesiology, all kinds of practices. And I also, along the way, certified as a yoga instructor, because the mind, body, and heart connection are really important to be a complete human. And so that's so when I started putting all of these things together, I realized that if I spent some time in schools doing pilot projects, I could find a way to really turn things around in classrooms. And so that's, but I spend some of my time doing that and working towards revamping education. There are a number of schools we're now organizing programs in across North America, and also working with families directly. And they could be struggling with issues of neurodiversity, literacy issues, attention issues. And a lot of it, I've discovered, gets down to a root cause of not having, believe it or not, a solid foundation in the alphabet itself. And this is the subject of my first book in a series that I'm writing about this. And the first book is recently published, and it's called Dear Genius, Harness the Hidden Power in Your ABCs.
You took the words out of my mouth. There was actually a couple of things you mentioned there. First of all, oftentimes I found out that when people are getting into trouble or when they're bored, it's not because they are sub-level. It's because whatever they're dealing with, their environment is
Mhm.
substandard as far as what their capabilities are. And we want to make sure that in order to live to our fullest potential, that we not only we're up to the challenge, but the challenge is also up for our capabilities, right? And that's very phenomenal when it comes to autism spectrum disorders and neurodiverse people. So that was one thing. The other thing is that many of the um, things that you mentioned, from yoga to the linguistic kinesiology, for instance, there is a movement component associated with it, which goes back to the mind and body, which many people have difficulty realizing that, our brain is not separate from our mind. And in order to nurture one, you have to nurture the other one as well. So really glad that you are bringing this to light for our parent community. And in addition to that, some of these other stuff that you're talking about with the alphabet, and congratulations on the book as well. So you talked fast and you covered so many things, but that's the hallmark of an expert. So tell us a little bit more about why this needs to be on parents' radars, and what are some of the challenges that our parents might be facing, that this would be a good sign or indication that they need to tune in.
I would say every generation is wired for its future. And so parents have a particular wiring that is not going to be what their children have. And so you may not realize that your child, or why your child, will need something different than what worked for you. Or you may have grown up feeling it didn't really work for you, and you're not really sure, and that's just the way it is. And your child is just going to have to learn to cope. Well, I'm here to say we actually now know how to activate the full, complete human, how to activate the imagination, and the things that we need more now than ever, now that we have AI, is creativity, emotional strength and coherence. We need to be able to connect and feel, like the things that are uniquely human at this point. Who knows what AI might do in the future, but at this point, if you want your child to be able to thrive, and also if you want to maintain your own capacity, begin at the beginning. And in my book, I talk about how important it is just to look at the alphabet itself. That, like, have someone print out the uppercase alphabet, or the capital letters, have them print out the small letters or the lowercase letters from A to Z or Z, depending on where in the world you are. And just have a look at that, because there is likely to be some lack of order. And so I'm calling it letter disorder. And this is a new concept that, contrary to what the people who are involved in literacy, and they call it the literacy wars, where some people talk about phonics and some people talk about comprehension and context and whole word learning. I'm saying, let's find a truce in the middle ground of foundation, because if you have a solid foundation, both of those systems are going to work way better, and people will realize that they can work together. There's validity for both sides, but if you don't have a solid alphabet, nothing is going to be as effective as it could be.
So you're talking about alphabet. Does cursive come into play with any of this?
So cursive has been really interesting, because when I work with families, we actually focus on the printed letters, because that is what you are still interacting with. When you think about anything you're reading on screens, anything you're reading in books, if you're still using them, those are all printed letters. And those are the letters that you need to solidly know. Now, cursive is just another form of the letters, and intended to speed up your capacity to write when there were no other methods for writing things quickly. And there are still schools that are teaching cursive exclusively. And in fact, right now I'm working with a family that's in the UK, and they have been taught exclusively the cursive letters. And so the little boy who was struggling, we had to take him back and make sure he was solid. We had to unlearn his cursive letters so that he could connect to the printed letters, and that was what was holding him back. Now he's been receiving awards regularly from his teacher for enthusiasm, for participation, and for his improved writing. So cursive, I'm not going to say don't do it, but start with the printed letters. Make sure you're solid there.
Okay. So you brought up a point about cursive, solid letters, recognition. What are some of the signs and symptoms, the telltale signs that parents need to kind of pay attention to? What are the symptoms that a child might be struggling and we need to pay attention? You mentioned dyslexia, for instance, but I'm sure there's more to it.
Well, dyslexia is really complex in all of its manifestations, and each person has a different set of symptoms that show up. But if someone, first of all, look at how they're forming their letters. If that is looking like there's a lack of order, things are not in their conventional place, position, or condition, I call that disorder. And that's what I'm saying. I'd like people to be thinking about, is there letter disorder, not in the person, but in what is being produced, rather than thinking, oh, is this dysgraphia? Is this dyslexia? Is like getting those other names can complicate things. Start off by looking at, is there a lack of order? Is there letter disorder? And then it could also show up in spelling confusion, if spelling is a challenge. Of course, the classic trouble in decoding and actually reading words is another sign. But it could also be if there is a sign of attention, and it's really fast minds. Like this little boy in the UK, his mind is so fast. We have to show him how he can choose to regulate when he's going to really slow things down and when he can let it rip. And so it's looking at the incredible wiring that these children have shown up with and recognize they are here for the future.
Right. So you also mentioned, so what is the age group, or is this something just to focus on primary kids, or high school kids are included, adults? How do you go?
As I said, I work with families, and when I work with families, the parents do the program alongside the child, because everybody can benefit from unlearning and relearning. Right. And with respect to how old can you go, my oldest student so far was 77 years old.
Wow. So
he found out about what I was doing and he said, I really want to do this. It turned out that he was left-handed, and when he was growing up, he was forced to be right-handed, and he felt that it had mixed him up his whole life. And when he was doing the program, he was sending me messages. I'm waking up laughing every day. People are listening to me in ways that they never did before. And I'll also say, for my own personal experience, when I've been going through all of the training and experiences to create the program that I have, which I call Wild Alphabet Adventures, because it has to be fun. And it changed me. As a tax lawyer, I thought, what do I need to learn about literacy? But as you were saying earlier, we tend to think this is it. This is where the brain is. And I used to jokingly refer to myself as a recovering tax lawyer. I was recovering from living here because suddenly I had comprehension in every cell of my body, to the point that it encouraged me to take on partner dancing. So I learned 10 styles of partner dancing. It also opened up my creative channels so that I spontaneously write spoken word poetry. I don't sit down and think, oh, it's time to write a poem today. I just kind of get this inspiration and I just start writing. So everybody has something to be enriched by this experience, and it has nothing to do with age. I will say the youngest I've worked with is 4, but that's only because they really wanted to do it. I wouldn't recommend forcing a child to do something at that age unless they really wanted to do it.
Got it. I love it. So what would be your one tip that parents that are listening could take away from this and implement that would improve not only themselves, but also their kids living a thriving and full life?
Well, there when we do our work, it's also learning warm-ups. So that's where we begin. Before we even get our hands into making our own letters, we talk about just the way that athletes, musicians, speakers will warm up. You should be warming up for learning as well. And simple things you can start doing are improving your capacity to balance on one foot and the other. And the fun game we play is we have a sock challenge where you have to see how creative you can be at standing on each foot while you're putting on your socks. Also, changing which hand you brush your teeth with, doing things to keep the brain going. And then we talk about tuning in for what energy is going to work for you, but that's a little more detailed. But I would say start with improving balance. Start with improving the ability to catch and throw the koosh balls, which don't bounce. And so you're more likely to be successful. They're those stringy kind of rubber balls, and improve the physical coordination that will help with the brain.
Actually, what you just described, I remember when we were in school, they taught us for stroke victims to make sure that you learn to sign with the opposite hand. You'd make sure that you can brush your teeth with, because you want to make sure you maintain your independence. But that's how profound it is that even a stroke victim can actually benefit from this kind of activity and actually prepare just in case those kind of things happen. So really, really amazing stuff. And I know you have so much more. This is just the tip of the iceberg. So how can people learn more about what you do and connect with you?
Well, our website is thelearningforce, FORCE.com. And there you will see links for assessments, for the book, and there are other various programs and courses that we offer. And now we've started to do some in person. And so we're looking at having weekend boot camp kind of in different cities. So check out the website to see what's happening there. We're doing them in Toronto first, but there's also online courses. I work with families in Dubai, in the UK, in Australia. And so that's the beauty of technology, that we can now do those things.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I love it. And I'm going to make sure for you guys, I'm going to put all of Diane's contact information, social, any ways that you can learn more about Diane in the description box of this video. So when you have time, make sure that you go ahead and check those, click on them, and connect with Diane. It is important for us to role model the art of connecting to our children as well. In this world where we are more and more global and connected, it seems like the kids are becoming more and more disconnected. So we need to role model the behavior, show them that we don't have all the answers, and it is important for us to connect when we need help, when we need support, when we need answers, to experts and those in the field that can shed light on the different challenges and how to overcome them in life. So be sure to connect with Diane. Make sure you follow her. And Diane, thank you so much for spending the time and taking time out of your busy schedule to be here and share some of these tips and giving us insight on this topic. Any final words for our audience members before we finish?
I invite you to trust yourself and your child as you would a seed, that each of you has everything inside of you you need to create an amazing life.
Well said. Well said. Awesome. Thank you so much. Guys, if you haven't clicked subscribe, make sure you subscribe so you get notified of the latest experts that come here, share their gifts and their expertise. And until next time, take care. Cheers. Thanks, Diane.
Thank you.